I just want to look now at capital allowances. And this is very much a reminder of what was introduced earlier on in the year in the budget. There's a temporary 40% first year allowance for qualifying plant and machinery, which is general plant and machinery. And this is until 31 March 2010. So if you are going to incur expenditure on plant and machinery, don't leave it to April, would be the planning to do, but bring that expenditure forward into March and take advantage of the 40% first year allowances on plant and machinery. Just a point to make is that this is in additional to the annual investment allowance. Every business has a £50,000 annual investment allowance that it can invest in plant, and it can investing assets, for the business, and you can effectively get 100% allowance for that, any amount up to that £50,000 per year. So this 40% first year allowance is in addition to the £50,000 you will also get. And just a reminder that 2 years ago we had the introduction of the integral features legislation, and this was really to give some allowances for certain items that would, under the previous law, would not be entitled to any relief whatsoever. Things such as lighting, general lighting, you didn't get capital allowances on it at all. Hot and cold water systems in a new building, you didn't get any allowances on it. And so the government, because there was a lot of case law and it was getting complex, the government decided to introduce legislation to set the rules. And so integral features, you are entitled to a 10% allowance on integral features. It's just something to note that if you are planning on any building work, then this is something we should look at. On cars, again, the first few points on the slide are what was introduced previously. In that capital allowances are now in accordance with the CO2 emissions. And if you have a gas guzzling car, then that car will go into the special rate pool, and you'll only get 10% writing down allowance on it. If you have a more frugal, in terms of petrol or diesel car, then you'll get it will be added to the general pool, and you'll get 20% writing down allowance on it. Now, the important point here is that because you haven't now got the expensive car regime, whereby an expensive car had its own pool, you don't get a balancing allowance when you dispose of the car. And that's quite a tax cost if you've got an expensive car. Also, lease cars, the situation has been made a lot easier in that it's just a 15% restriction for any cars above 160 grams per kilometre of CO2. What's new? Well, I mentioned at the beginning that if you drive an electric van, you're going to do very well. And in fact, there's a new 100% first year allowance on new, unused, not second-hand electric vans. So I'm sure you're all going to dash out now and buy your electric van, aren't you? To save tax. As I mentioned just now, cars lose their identity in the pools nowadays, unless there is a private use element. And if you have a car which you in your business, your car, and you use it privately, so you get a deduction in your tax computations, both for expenditure and for capital allowances purposes, then it remains in a separate pool, and when you sell that car, you will get a balancing allowance. And that can be very valuable for people like partners in businesses, partners in LLPs, and sole traders to obtain that balancing allowance. It also is true for companies, but it's very, very difficult to have a car in a company where it's not used wholly and exclusively for the purpose of the trade. There are a number of, well, a few wild and wacky ideas around whether there's anything that really works. I've heard of lending the car to a charity for a month and all sorts of things, but I think in reality, in companies, I think you will have to accept that they go into either the special rate pool or the general pool. Again, the Chancellor is hot on electric cars, and if you drive, or if you have a company electric car, or if you have a company electric van, then the good news is you'll have no taxable benefit on the provision by the company of that car or van. And those provisions are for 5 years from the 6th of April 2010. So again, it's part of the green message being given to us by the government. Moving 1 year on now to 2011-12, there's going to be a further increase in benefits on company cars. And the way this is being done is that a company car, the benefit is calculated by a rate depending on the CO2 emissions of the car multiplied by the list price of the car. And the rate depends on, as I said, on CO2 emissions. If you have a very low CO2 emission car, then you don't pay any benefit on the car at all. Now, previously, it was announced that the lower rate, the lower emissions, would be 120 grams. But this is being reduced from 2011-2012 to 99 grams per kilometre. So those cars now, anything from 100 grams above, you'll have a benefit calculated at 10%. Previously, you wouldn't have had any benefit on those cars. And again, just a reminder that the £80,000 cap, it is the case that if you have a Ferrari at £150,000, your benefit is only based on £80,000, but in future it will be based on £150,000. So you'll be paying, you have a benefit of 35% of £150,000. And again, from 2011-12, the fuel benefit is also increasing, and the basis of fuel benefit is an amount multiplied by a factor depending on your CO2 emissions. And the basic amount is increasing from £16,900 to £18,000, and that is actually a year earlier from 6 April 2010, so that is from next year. So when you take that package together, I think there's some significant increases in benefits in kind on cars.